Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivadhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, 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 Dora Haribo. Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Gaura Premanande. All glories to the some devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Hare Krishna. Nama Om Viśvātmā Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripat Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya. Jaya Śrī Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswating Vyasa Tato Jayamudiraye Nashta Prayesha Vabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 2, Prayers by the Demigods, verse number 6. The reference to prayers by the demigods, these prayers begin, where do they begin? Verse 23, I think? No, later. Quite a bit later in the chapter. Yes, verse 26. So we're leading up to those prayers. We're getting the continuation of the preparations for the appearance of the Lord. Bhagavān api Viśvātmā. Bhagavān api Viśvātmā. Viditvā kaṁsa-jam bhayam. Viditvā kaṁsa-jam bhayam. yadūnāṁ nija-nāthānāṁ, yadūnāṁ nija-nāthānāṁ, yoga-māyāṁ samādiśat, yoga-māyāṁ samādiśat, bhagavān api viśvātmā, viditvā kaṁsa-jam bhayam, yadūnāṁ nija-nāthānām, yoga-māyāṁ samādiśat. 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 Bhagavān api Viśvātmā, kaṁsa-jam, yadūnāṁ nija-nāthānām, yoga-māyāṁ samādiśat. Bhagavān Śrī Kṛṣṇa, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Api, also, Viśvātmā, who is the Supersoul of everyone. Viditvā, understanding the position of the Yadus and his other devotees. Kaṁsa-jam, because of kaṁsa. Bhayam, fear. Yadūnām, of the Yadus. Nija-nāthānāṁ, who had accepted him, the Supreme Lord, as their supreme shelter. Yoga-māyām, unto yoga-māyā, the spiritual potency of Krishna. Samādiśat, ordered as follows. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: to protect the Yadus, his personal devotees, from Kamsa's attack, the personality of Godhead, Viśvātmā, the Supreme Soul of everyone, order Yoga-māyā as follows. Purport: the words bhagavān api viśvātmā viditvā kaṁsa-jam bhayam are commented upon by Srila Sanatana Goswami. Bhagavān Swayam is Krishna. Krishna's too, Bhagavān Swayam. He is Viśvātmā, the original Supersoul of everyone, because his plenary portion expands as the Supersoul. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Kshetrajñam, Chapimang vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Lord Krishna is the Kshetrajña, or Supersoul, of all living entities. He is the original source of all expansions of the personality of Godhead. There are hundreds and thousands of plenary expansions of Vishnu, such as Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Vasudeva. But here, in this material world, the Viśvātmā, the Supersoul, for all living entities, is Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. What means Kshirodakashayi, literally? Yes, very good. Vishnu who lies in the milk ocean. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara sarvabhutanam hrideshe Arjuna tishtati. The Supreme Lord is situated in the heart of all living entities, O Arjuna. Krishna is actually Viśvātmā by his plenary expansion as Vishnu Tattva. Yet, because of his affection for his devotees, he acts as Supersoul to give them directions. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto mata smritir dhyanam apohanam cha. What means apohanam? Yeah, it comes to mean forgetting. It kind of means avoiding, going around. The affairs of the Supersoul pertain to Kshirodakashayi Vishnu. You know this word pertain? Having to do with. The affairs of the Supersoul have to do with Kshirodakashayi Vishnu, but Krishna took compassion on Devaki, his devotee, because he understood her fear of Kamsa's persecution. You know the word persecution. A pure devotee is always fearful of material existence. What is a pure devotee always fearful of? So one might turn this around. If we're fearful of material existence, that could lead us to become pure devotees, if we're enough fearful. Isn't it? Something to think about. No one knows what will happen next. Does anyone know what will happen next? For one may have to change his body or her body at any moment. Tata dehantara prapti. Knowing this fact, a pure devotee acts in such a way that he will not have his life spoiled by being obliged to accept another body and undergo the tribulations of material existence. Everyone know the word tribulation? What's a tribulation? Yeah, turmoil, trouble, disturbance. What means spoiled? Spoiled. Turning bad. Damaged, lost. Yeah. Kind of like also food when it goes bad, we say it is spoiled. But we also speak of spoiled children. What's a spoiled child? What makes a child spoiled? What is that describing when we say, oh, this child has been spoiled? Gets everything he wants, or she, yeah. No manners, yeah. Spoiled. Gets everything they want, demands, and then gets, yeah, that's spoiled. So Prabhupada is saying a pure devotee acts in such a way that he will not have his life spoiled by being obliged to accept another body and undergo the tribulations of material existence. This is bhayam, or fear. And then Prabhupada quotes a famous verse from the 11th canto, Bhayang dvitiya biniveshata syat. And he stops there. We may come back to this verse. This fear is due to material existence. Properly speaking, everyone should always be alert and fearful of material existence. What means alert? En garde, en français. Awake, yes. En garde. Properly speaking, everyone should always be alert and fearful of material existence, but although everyone is prone to be affected by the ignorance of material existence, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is always alert to the protection of his devotees. What means prone? Yeah, or you could say subject to. Although everyone is subject to being affected by the ignorance of material existence, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is always alert to the protection of his devotees. So first Prabhupada is saying, we should be alert. And then he's saying, actually, the Lord is alert for us. So that's reassuring. Okay. Krishna is so kind and affectionate toward his devotees that he helps them by giving them the intelligence by which to exist in this material world without forgetting him even for a moment. The Lord says, Tesham eva anukampartam aham agyanajam tama nashayami atma bhavasto jnana dipena bhasvata. This is a good verse to learn. It's the last of the 4 verses regarded as Chaturshloki Bhagavad Gita. So, if you were looking for a verse to learn, to memorize, here's one you can learn. Translation of this verse: out of compassion for them, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. That's good news. The word yoga means link. Any system of yoga is an attempt to reconnect our broken relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Oh, they didn't tell them this in one... I went to one sort of large yoga event in Beijing this last March. Beijing, yes. It happened, the venue was kind of strange. The venue was an Audi auto dealer. And they had a large upstairs room with glass all around. And on the stage, they advertised Audi. Anyway, and it was full of, I think it was all ladies. There were about 100 ladies doing yoga. Maybe there were 1 or 2 men. So I was invited to speak. I was not the main person they were coming to hear. They were doing all their yoga exercises. But I spoke something about what is yoga. Actually, the problem is because it's China, one has to be very careful about speaking about religion. So I couldn't say what Prabhupada is saying here. At least not directly. Any system of yoga is an attempt to reconnect our broken relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are different types of yoga, of which Bhakti Yoga is the best. We're in the right place, folks. In other yoga systems, one must undergo various processes before attaining perfection, but Bhakti Yoga is direct. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Yoginam api sarvesham madgatenantaratmana. That's another verse that Dr. Rick is going to be memorizing. Yes? Why not? Of all yogis, he who always abides in me. What means abide? To dwell, to live, to reside. But it has a nice sense, abide has a sense of, I don't know, something like loyalty maybe, dedication, yeah. Of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. Interesting that Prabhupada uses the word united here, because sometimes when we are feeling nervous about the idea of oneness, merging, and so on, then we don't like the word unite. But here, Prabhupada is using the word unite. For the Bhakti Yogi, a human body is guaranteed in his next existence, as stated by Lord Krishna, Shuchinang Srimatang Gehe Yoga Brashto Abhijayate. So what's guaranteed for a Bhakti Yogi? Yeah. Guaranteed. Huh? A human body. If you're practicing Bhakti Yoga, you're guaranteed at least a human body next life. You don't seem to be very happy about that. How come? Yeah. What happened to back home, back to Godhead? Okay. Yoga-māyā is the spiritual potency of the Lord. Out of affection for his devotees, the Lord always stays in spiritual touch with them. although otherwise his Maya potency is so strong that she bewilders even exalted demigods like Brahma. Therefore, the Lord's potency is called yoga-māyā. Since the Lord is Viśvātmā, he immediately ordered yoga-māyā to give protection to Devaki. And of course, how yoga-māyā will do this will be explained in the next verse. Stay tuned for coming attractions in this gripping story, the gripping story of the appearance of the Supreme Lord Bhagavān. Krishna, bhagavān api viśvātmā viditvā kaṁsa-jam bhayam yadūnāṁ nija-nāthānāṁ yoga-māyām samādiśat. To protect the Yadus, his personal devotees, from Kamsa's attack, the personality of Godhead, Viśvātmā, the Supreme Soul of everyone, ordered yoga-māyā as follows. It's kind of a transition verse. We're hearing how the Lord is about to speak, so it's an introduction to the Lord speaking. And in the introduction to the Lord speaking, we're being told significance of who is speaking, the significance of the person who is about to speak. It's one way of understanding. He is none other than Bhagavān, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he is Viśvātmā. Atma, we know the word, means soul or self. Viśva, we know also, right? Viśva means universe, yeah. And Vish, this prefix, Shri Radha Gopinath Ki Jai, means to enter. So here we are, we're all in what we call the universe, and we are Atma, we are self. So in one sense, we could say we are all Viśvātmā. We are selves within the universe. But obviously this is not referring to us. It's referring to the Supreme Atma, Param Atma. And he is the self of the universe, which is an interesting notion that's very much emphasized in the Śrī Vaishnava Sampradaya, where they will say that just as we as soul are within this body, so the soul of our body is ourselves, in a parallel sense, as a kind of analogy, how to understand the relationship of God and the universe. They like to say, I believe Ramanujacharya in particular would say, God is the soul of the universe, which is his body. And if you think about that, that's interesting. It means here we are walking around in God's body. And what's also then interesting is to think about Mother Yashoda's experience of seeing in the mouth of the Lord the entire universe. So she was seeing the Lord directly, she was with the Lord, and then what happens when the Lord opens his mouth inside, he reveals his body. Wait a minute. So there's the body of God outside his body. But of course, the idea of distinguishing body and soul, we remember, was a problem for, who was this a problem for? On Sunday we discussed Chaitanya Charitamrita, to make this distinction. Yes, for the poet it wasn't a problem until who pointed out the problem? Sarat Damodar considered this a big problem to make this distinction. Well, in any case, here we have it. And the identification here that Prabhupada makes in the word for word, Viśvātmā, the super soul of everyone. So he is the soul of the soul, and he is everywhere within the universe. We often hear the idea of pervading. The Lord pervades everything. And when we think about pervading, we might think about the air, how the air is sort of pervading space. But if we go a step further, then we become aware that there is space, and this space is what is really pervading everything. And so space, akasha, is related with or identified with Brahman. And this happens in the Vedanta Sutras. So I thought we could take a little journey into Vedanta Sutra, Brahma Sutra, to see what sort of discussion might be going on here with regard to Akasha and Brahman. Now, be forewarned, this can get a little bit technical. But what's essentially going on is the Brahma Sutra, Vedanta Sutra, is an explanation. You could say it's a kind of a purport to the Upanishads. And so it is sometimes referring to or alluding to particular passages in the Upanishads. And then it's explaining, this is what's happening. This is what's really going on. Okay, so I'm going to jump into a section we usually don't hear about, we usually don't hear. Prabhupada, when Prabhupada quotes the Vedanta Sutra, what does he generally quote? Atato Brahma Jignasa, which is the very first sutra. And in one sense, he's saying, that says it all. Now, therefore, we should be inquisitive about Brahman. And in fact, much of the first, we can say, quarter of the Brahma Sutra is elaborating on that point, why it is that it's Brahman that we should be interested in. But here we have, and this is the commentary, it's been translated, the commentary of Baladev Vidyabhushana, who is our Gaudiya Vaishnava Vedanta Acharya. So we're on safe ground here, I would say. In the fifth Adhikarana of the first, or the third Adhyaya, the third pada of the first Adhyaya, we have a discussion of the topic, the dahara, or the small, is Brahman. This, I know you're going to say, what? Okay, here's what we're talking about. First of all, there's a structure. The Vedanta discussion has a structure, which is that first there will be a subject. And what is the subject here? The discussion, or the Vishaya, the subject, is taken from the Chandogya Upanishad, chapter 8. Chandogya is the Upanishad which is usually quoted by the non-dualists to insist that there is one single absolute reality, Brahman, and that's the end of the story. Well, we understand it's a more complicated story than that. In some sense it's a simple story, but in any case, quoting from the Chandogya, here we have, there is the city of Brahman, the body, and in it the palace, the small lotus of the heart. So the heart is here compared to two things. It's compared to a lotus and to a palace. And in that small ether. Small ether? Yeah. So this is going to be the issue. There is something called Dahara Akasha. Now, what exists within that small ether, that is to be sought for. That's to be looked for. That is to be understood. Okay, so in the Chandogya Upanishad, they're saying there's something, there's a akasha, there's a space in the heart, and we should be looking for that. Okay? And if they should say to him, okay, now is going to come someone who is maybe a skeptic, or maybe just questioning, but maybe skeptically questioning. Now, with regard to that city of Brahman and the palace in it, the small lotus of the heart and small ether within the heart, what is there within that that deserves to be sought for, or that is to be understood? So what is it you're looking for in this space in the heart? And so the Upanishad goes on to say, here's what you can answer to that person who is questioning or challenging in that way. Tell them this. And here it starts to get interesting. Quote, as large as this ether, all space is, so large is that ether within the heart. Both heaven and earth are contained within it, both fire and air, both sun and moon, both lightning and stars, and whatever there is of him, the self, here in the world, and whatever is not, that is, whatever has been or will be, all that is contained within it, within this ether in the heart. Isn't that cool? This morning, before it got light, it was still dark, I was walking out and I saw it's very clear sky and so many stars, and the moon was there. And I had been thinking about this little passage, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. All of this that I see out there, which is so far away, is in the heart. Go figure. How does that work? Then he goes on, and if they should say to him, this is again the person who is doubtful, if everything that exists is contained in that city of Brahman, all beings and all desires, whatever can be imagined or desired, then what is left of it when old age reaches it and scatters it, or when it falls to pieces? Well, you want to meditate on the heart, but wait a second, that heart is going to get old and it's all going to fall apart. So what's going to be the use of that? You want to know what you should answer to that doubting person? Okay, here we are. Then he should say, by the old age of the body, that is the ether or Brahman within it, does not age. By the death of the body, that the ether or Brahman within it is not killed. That, the Brahman, is the true Brahma city, not the body. In it, all desires are contained. It is the self, free from sin, from old age, from death and grief, from hunger and thirst, which desires nothing but what it ought to imagine. Now, as here on earth people follow as they are commanded and depend on the object which they are attached to, be it a country or a piece of land. Okay. The key idea is, it is the self that is free from sin. Now here, self has been spelled S, capital S-E-L-F, referring to Paramatma. So this is getting back to the point being made in this verse that we're reading. Paramatma, Viśvātmā, is here. But let me go on a little bit. And he's continuing with this reply. He says, and as here on earth whatever has been acquired by exertion perishes, so perishes whatever is acquired for the next world by sacrifices and other good actions performed on earth. Those who depart from hence, after having discovered the self and those true desires, for them there is freedom in all the worlds. Okay, this was all Chandogya Upanishad, and now is expressed, and that was the Vishaya, that's the subject. That's what's being discussed. But now comes the doubt. The doubt is, what is this dahara akasha in the lotus of the heart? Is it the material space or ether, or is it the jiva, or is it the Lord Vishnu? And then the next component of standard Vedanta is called the Purva Paksha. The Purva Paksha is the preliminary position. It's the idea which is then going to be refuted by the Acharya, in this case Vyasa, and what he gives as the refutation, that will be called the Siddhanta. So the doubt is, what is this dahara, material space, dahara prakasha, this space within the heart? Is it just ether, or is it the jiva, or is it Lord Vishnu? And the Purva Paksha, it is the element called ether, for the word akasha has the well-known meaning of ether or space, or it may be the jiva or the individual self, because it is spoken of here as the Lord of the city of the body and occupying a small space. So it could mean akasha as in space, material space. Bhumir aponalo vayu, kam. Another word for space is kam, K-H-A-M. Or maybe it means jiva, one of these two. And then Badarayana, Vyasa says, the author, or in the explanation of Baladeva, the author replies to this objection by declaring that the dahara akasha, or the small ether, is Brahman. And then all of this was just an introduction to the next sutra. And the next sutra says, dahara uttarebhyaha. That was the whole sutra, which says, in translation here, the small ether in the lotus of the heart is Brahman, because the subsequent arguments establish it to be so. This is Vedanta. Vedanta means packing ideas into such condensed form that no ordinary person can understand what they're talking about. Or even extraordinary person. And therefore, Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, we read that he gives himself as sort of everyman when he's speaking with Prakashananda Saraswati, who is this Vedantist, and he's asking Lord Chaitanya, why is it, because you are a sannyasi, you are not like all of us sitting and studying this Vedanta? Why are you not doing it? And what was his answer? Yes, my guru told me I am a fool. He quotes his guru, Murka tumi tomar nahi Vedanta adhikar. You don't have the adhikar to study Vedanta because Murka. Now, of course, we know Lord Chaitanya is not Murka. He's not a fool. But he is saying this for our part to remind us that we might find it difficult to really appreciate what is going on in these sutras. Still, then now you may ask, so why is Swami sitting there and reading from Vedanta Sutra? Huh? And the reason is I want to get back to the natural commentary to Vedanta Sutra, which we are reading, which is called Srimad Bhagavatam. And in this natural commentary to Srimad Bhagavatam, we have this word, Viśvātmā. And I just want to make this connection with Vedanta Sutra, because what's going to be elaborated here is when it's speaking of Brahman, actually we're talking about Vishnu. So the Brahma, the Akasha, the small Akasha which is in the heart, what is that? That is Brahman. What is this Brahman in the heart? It is Vishnu. But we go a step further with the commentaries in the Bhagavatam. The commentators here, Prabhupada says, the words bhagavān api viśvātmā viditvā kaṁsa-jam bhayam are commented upon by Srila Sanatana Goswami. Bhagavan Swayam is Krishna. Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. Because one might say, well, yes, it's Vishnu, because Vishnu is Viśvātmā, he is the Lord in the universe, and being the Lord in the universe, he knows what's going on, and therefore he's concerned, and he cares for those who are being distressed by Kamsa, and therefore it's Vishnu. Sanatana Goswami, different acharyas are saying Vishnu or Krishna. Sanatana Goswami says it's Krishna. So Krishna hasn't appeared yet. So he's caring about Devaki and Vasudeva. You could say, in a sense, from outside the universe, because Krishna hasn't appeared yet. Vishnu, yes, but from outside the universe, he's making this arrangement. And he's making an arrangement with who? Yoga-māyā. The acharyas also point out that it's interesting. Yoga-māyām in this verse is given in masculine form. Normally, we understand yoga-māyā is feminine. And incidentally, there's some commentary. Yoga-māyā is identified with ekanangsha, and ekanangsha is another name for Srimati Subhadra Devi. So we have another connection there. Yoga-māyā Subhadra Devi ki. So, and why, we might ask, is, maybe this will be explained in later verses and commentary and purport, but why, we might ask, does Krishna take help from Yoga-māyā in this matter? First of all, what is Yoga-māyā going to be asked to do? we probably already know. Yes. Yes, some fetus transferring is going to go on, right? Some divine fetus transfer to the womb of Rohini. Now, sometimes I announce as a forewarning, now will come one of the Swami's speculations. So, anyway, yoga-māyām, why male? Because he, now in masculine form, is involved in entering, in bringing Baladeva to Rohini. And someone might be asking, so how is it that Rohini, who is also a wife of Vasudeva, right? How is she getting impregnated? If he is imprisoned with Devaki, how did that happen? Of course, we can say immaculate conception, right? But how is this immaculate conception happening? Yoga-māyā is involved, and yoga-māyā is yoga-māyām, male. Hare Krishna. Sorry? Well, the plot thickens, doesn't it? Yeah.
He fulfills the role of the man.
Yeah. As an extension of Vasudeva. Anyway, that's okay. Let's just leave that. That's maybe going too far. In any case, all of this is happening. Why? Because the Lord perceives bhayam, the fear, the anxiety of his devotee. And so, the bottom line, the essential theme, what's interesting for us here is that the Lord is showing that he cares for his devotees. And his devotees are in contrast to those who turn away from the Lord. The devotees turn toward the Lord. So, bhayam dvitiya biniveshatasya, which Prabhupada quotes in the verse, in the purport, Isham, it goes on that verse, Isham apetasya, apeta, apaita, of those who have, or ishada petasya, and those who have turned away from the Lord. Viparyayo asmriti, there's a change of identity. Viparyaya asmriti, and they're forgetting the Lord. Tanmayaya, by the Lord's maya. Tanmayayato abhajetam. However, what do the devotees do? They worship him, the Lord. Abhajetam bhaktyai kayeshamam. How do they worship? Bhaktya, with devotion. And then how does the Lord respond? Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita how he reciprocates with one who worships him with devotion. What's one example? Okay, he gives the intelligence by which we can then serve him. What else? He maintains the devotee. Yes. He takes the offering. Patram pushpam palam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati. When does he take that offering? When it's offered with devotion, right? Yes. And then in relation to more immediate to this, what is it? Samoham sarvabhuteshu na te dvesho stina priya. He's indifferent, he's equal to everyone. Ye bhajanti tu mang bhaktya. But those who worship me with devotion, mayi te, I am in them. Mayi te, teshu cha api aham. And I, aham, am in them. So there's this interesting, what normally is impossible to be simultaneously one thing in another thing, which is then in one thing. I mean, how does that work? That works with devotion. That's the way it works. How does that work? With devotion. If somebody wants to know, how does that work? With devotion. Yes. All right, so stay tuned. Tomorrow we'll find out what Yoga-māyā says. What Yoga-māyā says. What the Lord will say to Yoga-māyā. Okay, Hare Krishna. Questions, comments, discussion, corrections, improvements? Why is it called tradition? I don't know who particular. It's very much about Brahman. That's really the subject. And in contrast to the Purva Mimamsa Sutras of Jaimini, which is essentially starting a tato dharma jigyasa. Now is time to inquire and understand Dharma. The Brahma Sutra says tato Brahma jigyasa. So it could be taken that from the first sutra one takes the title. I think there's some tradition like that. In any case, within Mimamsa there is a tradition of taking 6 principles by which one can interpret a text. One of these 6 is, what is the first statement of the text? What is in the beginning of the text? What is in the end of the text? And then there's 4 others. What is repeated? What is new? Like that. Yes, Parita. Immaculate conception.
There was a very big doubt by Joseph and other people that impregnated by that.
Yeah.
So but we, for the first time, actually I was thinking with Rohini how this religious understood. Because once that she became impregnated, she became pregnant. And so in Vedic culture there are very
Yeah. Indeed. So the way Puranic literature is, it may very well be that this is fully explained elsewhere in other Puranas, like Padma Purana or one of the others, but we're not familiar. The Bhagavatam is, I've said it many times before, it's very much a concentrated, focused summary with a very focused purpose, and so such questions may be addressed elsewhere. That's all I can say. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, how pure do we have to be? They don't care where they are. Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say what Prabhupada is addressing his followers, his disciples, his those who want to learn from him, and so he's urging us to be fearful, in the sense of what is sometimes called a healthy fear, to have a healthy fear of Maya, to be careful, to be alert, and so on. But Prabhupada is not, how to say, he's not thereby, he's including himself, I would say. Saying we who are practicing pure devotion, and I like to also quote Prabhupada in one lecture when he said, liberated does not mean having 4 arms and 8 legs. In other words, to be liberated means you can be a normal person just fully engaged in devotional service. And he did refer to his disciples, I think more than once, as pure devotees. Why? Because we're not doing karma, jnana, and yoga, we're doing bhakti. And so from that perspective, he's being inclusive, but he's including himself in this statement, I would suggest. He's saying, I'm also fearful of material existence. I don't want it. But it's a healthy fear. What does that mean, healthy fear? It's a fear which serves its function, namely to keep us away from that which is dangerous. Just like it's a good idea to be fearful of a loose tiger. Tigers are practically going extinct in any case. But if the news came out, there's a tiger loose from the Brussels Zoo. I don't know if they have any. Antwerp, they have tigers maybe. So, if the news was out, then we might have a healthy fear that it's roaming around. But if we're there's no reason to believe that there are any tigers loose, but somebody's feeling gripped by a fear of tigers. Yeah, we would call that paranoia. That's not a healthy fear. That's a paranoia. That's not. Yeah, we all, before we walk out of Radhadesh castle, we're looking left and right. Where is a tiger? But on the other side, as Prabhupada is also saying in this purport, that sentence, a pure devotee is always fearful of material existence. No one knows what will happen next, for one may have to change his body at any moment. And you have seen this, you have experienced this with our dear Viśvātmā Prabhu some months ago, isn't it? Right here in this very house.
He was also saying you're not afraid enough of Maya. Devotees also, I think he told the devotees that when he was going to live members, that he was always praying to Krishna.
Yeah.
But then what also comes to mind is the devotees, the gopas. Krishna is standing there and they're just all chanting and dancing and they go into, was it Bhagasura, the snake?
Agasura.
So,
Elaborate.
Why were they so fearless? Was it just because Krishna was standing there? A little bit? And then one last thought I also had is that Mother Yashoda, whenever something happened to Krishna, she would always do all kinds of rituals to purify.
Yeah, she was fearful for him. So that was her Vatsalya, of course. And in the case of the cowherd boys, what is their rasa? It's Sakya. And for them, Krishna was, they already knew Krishna he can do pretty amazing things, so he's probably going to be able to help us here as well. Why not? You know, when you're little kids, I remember we used to run around and do so many things, and if there were some older kid with us, there was also a feeling, you know, everything's going to be okay because I still remember when I was maybe 5 years old, and there was a girl lived down the street who was 13 years old, and I thought, wow, she's already an adult because she was 13 years old. You remember when it was like that? So they may have seen Krishna, the cowherd boys, as kind of this older brother in a sense. Of course, Balaram was the actual older brother, but still, he was doing pretty amazing things. So nothing to worry about. He was personally present. But with Mother Yashoda, it was a major problem. It was a big concern. Why? Because Vatsalya, her mood is that of protecting. Helpless. Krishna's little delicate child, so helpless. Yeah. Right. Okay. Whoops. Yes. Not USSR, other countries, but yes. Yeah, taking risk. It wasn't that we weren't fearful. That was part of the thrill. We were getting lots of adrenaline rush. Sometimes it was quite intense. But actually, yes, this is a quality that devotees cultivate, is courage. And being courageous doesn't mean that there's no fear. There can still be fear, but you face the fear. You say, okay, as fearful as I am, anyway, we're just going to do this. And pray to Krishna. Krishna will help. Yes, Prahlad Bhakta Prabhu, you were going to say something.
The idea of the universe out there and the universe in your heart is
Yeah.
a difficult one for materialists like me to understand. But I thought there is something analogous to that in the idea of a hologram. A hologram, and you can take a piece of the hologram and you have the whole picture.
Yes. That's an interesting analogy. Thank you. Yes. The hologram as an analogy for this connection of big universe, small universe. What this all reminded me of was of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's song, Udilo Aruna Purabhabhage, verse number 7, is Jivera Kalyana Saranakam Jagate Asye E Madhuranam Avidya Timira Tapana Rupe Hrit Gagane Viraje. Hrit Gagane, in the sky of the heart. Bhaktivinoda says the Lord appears in the form of the holy name in the sky of the heart, where he doesn't use the word akasha, he uses gagana, which also means sky. I've always been struck by that expression, in the sky of the heart. And then just this morning I found it's also in 12th Canto Bhagavatam. The Lord appears in the sky of the heart in the form, I forget how it's put, we can look at that another time. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Gaur Premanande.